Hello, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi everyone, today I'm going to present about my presentation from English Morphosyntax. The title is Non-Finite Clauses. Context of non-finite clauses. Non-finite clauses is a clause in which there is no tensive verb. Their tenseless clauses, main clauses, remember, are always finite, so non-finite clauses can only be subordinate. Non-finite clauses contain a verb which does not show tense. Is usually understand the time referred to form the context of the main clause. The finite verb must have an other subject to agree with. Non-finite verbs are not subject of this constraint. And now I have differences between finite clause and non-finite clause. Finite clause include independent or dependent, constant subject, constant finite verb, person, number, or tenses. And number two, non-finite clauses, dependent or subordinate clause, have difference from bare infinitive, for example, work, and to infinitive, for example, to work, and in participle, for example, walking, it participle, for example, walked, and the verbs does not carry tenses, may or may not contain subject, and finally cannot stand alone or dependent. Next, the term from non-infinite clause. Number one, infinite verbs are bare infinitive and to infinitive. Number two, participle verbs, passive participle and imparticiple. And next, infinitive verbs. One, bare infinitive. This just consist of the unstable stem of a lexical verbs. The lexical verb is not preceded by any auxiliary verb. It is called bare because it lacks the infinitive practice too. Example of sentences with bare infinitive clauses are: she made him wash her socks. This non-finite unstable form can be distinguished from simple present tense form as in I wash her socks every week by a tense future on verb to be read as many tense. This is my like in the structure, verb tense and wash. And number two, infinitive verbs. For example, we eagerly accept his invitations to taste the wine. When the infinitive particle to is present, auxiliary possible mentioned in capture, perfect, progressive, and past can also make an appearance. However, since modals are inherently tense, modal don't figure and non-finite clauses like the verb as full modal. The verb following the infinite particle to has the basic stem form in several respects, then it's appropriate to think of the as replacing the mode option. So I shall analyze this to itself as a tense auxiliary. And next, passive participle. Participle verbs, for example, the penguin loaded, we took a rest. I bought loaded words. These are like bare infinitives in consisting of just a lexical verb, but in the passive participle form with a passive meaning, like an above example. Next, in participle verbs, as with two infinitive clauses, auxiliaries can figure in participle clauses instead of the first verb being preceded by to. It takes the ing affix. For example, he always had difficulty in apologizing. The attached tense as a video to verb in the inform, whether lexical form auxiliary. Complementizers and non-finite clauses. As in infinitive clauses, there are two complementizers. Position is not finite clauses that are followed by to and from complementizers. For and whether and from we have VH expressions. Represents all subordinate clauses as introduced by complementers and dominated by s, unless something prepositions, but it only represent the VH equation position in s when necessary. And next, for and whether. Only that infinitive clauses can be introduced by the for and whether interpretive complementizer, whether or new for and whether complementizer. This for figures overtly only two infinitive clauses with an over subject. I include one example. For Angelo to get all the plan seems unfair. And you can see from my PPTX, you can analyze this from my description. And next, from which breeze, non-finite with clauses can be interrogative or relative. The first interrogative clauses, as with the yes or no, interrogative whether clauses just look at non-finite, whereas interrogative clauses can only be the infinite and they always have a cover subject. You can see my PPT. Finite VH interrogative clauses can only be the infinitive and they always have cover subject. For example, Sarah asked me how many kids to expect, like that. Talk about with my example. With us, the subject, the interrogative clauses is controlled by the main clause subject is Sarah. Next, the function of non-finite clauses. The finite clause is non-finite clauses will be familiar to you from previous chapters. They are illustrated, some them of several times. In the example given so far in this chapter, before reading further than take time to go through the example of sentences containing non-finite clause presented thus for and decide on the function of that clause in each. List them by function. When you encounter a function for the first time, start a new list. This quite big exercise in answer in the following sections. Next, subject and extrapose subject. This function, as with finite clauses, capture 8 from book. A non-finite clausal subject should be dominated by NP. The subject clause is extraposed. For example, number 1, stripping wallpaper is a wretched business. Number 2, is a wretched business stripping wallpaper. Notice that in participial clauses with over subject cannot be extraposed. Complement A and AP. This function of non-finite clauses, as this an example, extrapose subject is an introductions. There are several types. Adjective complementation by infinitive clause depending on the head adjective itself. Here are distinguished two main types, exemplified by number 1. And as number 1 makes is reluctant to try it. Number 2, the piano is impossible to move. Adjective / pattern. A, like reluctant or anxious, eager, keen, hesitant, unwilling, unlikely, happy, and liable. Adjectives the partner B, like impossible or easy, hard, difficult, tough, tiresome, boring, enjoyable, disgusting, and delicious. And next, differences between adjective the partner A and B. A, the adjective, the higher subject controls to cover subject of the adjective complement clause. B, the adjectives by contrast with the adjective, the higher subject controls to object. That's clause the lower subject with B. Adjective can be controlled, it must either be free. And next, complement of P and in PP. Only in participial clauses and can complement a preposition with its P and P. The PP itself is function as non-complement in non-NP, but PPS with non-finite clauses complement have other functions too. With the functions of the relevant PP in the following. Number 1, for example, number 1, John reparked the car in his absence by leaving the handbrake off. And number 2, within approaching are capitulated. The BPS in number 1 until number 3 are functioning as adverbials. That's in number 4 as complement of the preposition verb results, and that's in number 5 as complement to a helpless in AP. And next adverbial, we have just seen that all finite clauses can function as the complement of the A in PP. Functioning is adverbial. Non-finite clauses can also function as adverbial in their own right. In participle with in without over subject. For example, contractor having invited us, we cancel other plans. And next, infinitive with and without over subject. For example, we hung around for the count to appear. And next, complement of in, of, and in, and P. There are further, for example, S, B, C. In this, the covered subject of the infinite clauses is controlled by the subject of the subordinate clause. Now in the NPS in B and C, the subject has an assumed to the form if positive determiner. So the covered subject of the infinite clauses B and C is controlled by the determiner of the NP which the clauses appears. And there's a main point. There is little more than this besides glacial modifier NPS are relative clauses with cover BH expressed. They are sective only and this modifier of nom in NP. You can see maybe PX and you can understanding there. The next complement of V, as mentioned, is complementation of verb by non-infinite clauses requires more discussion. The follows is intended to give an initial impression of the rich and introversional art of English grammar. This has effects of assigning more specific function to the complements direct and indirect object, subject and object predicative, propositional complement. It is not clear, however, that such categorization system is appropriate in clauses in case of complementation by non-infinite clause. And next, verb plus NP plus to infinitive. I have some examples. Number 1, I prefer the butler to taste it first. Number 2, she encouraged Mulden to buy her the diamonds. Next, verb plus NP plus ing participle. He had heard Victoria and Albert singing that tune. I caught the clowns helping the elephant into the trees. Next, verb plus NP plus verb infinitive. Marcel made Gillespie him a grape. Number 2, he worshipped Magda polish of the tooth. And next, or the end, verb NP plus passive participle. She found the icon buried in the wall. She kept really impressioned in the tower. Okay, that's my presentation. If me have wrong or mistakes, please apologizing me. Okay, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.